today we're going to talk about background checks, and we're going to do so with a little bit of a Halloween theme because it made me happy this morning. So today's agenda is I want to showcase background checks in SAM. Just want to show you how they function to make sure that you're aware, and then we'll talk about how you get the records into a client site. So that could be your team, it could be the agent, the family or the client themselves. Um, I want to talk about setting better visibility to it because the way that I'm going to suggest that you use background checks, it can get really clustered if there's a lot of people in the home or there's a lot of out of state background checks. So I want to show you how we can get better visibility. And then I'll show background checks, how they can be utilized on the checklist so that you can interact with your families for that. Let's let them in. So first, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the background checks on a family record. And so here is a family record, and over here is background checks. You should have this on your site. If you happen not to, you can get with us to add it, but I think it should be there.
Jeff, are you recording?
I am pretty sure I am recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And yeah, okay. So one of the things that I'm going to show first is just how you can add a background check record to a family site manually. So you can click add on the side, and I would type this in as for Frank Sterling Frank. I don't know what this guy's name is. Sterling Frank, I think is what his name is. And then put in the particular state for which this is for. There are some fields on the site already by default. So if you're new to the system, this is probably what your site looks like. This would be all the different background checks that are needed. Every state has really different rules. Different programs have different rules. So this is sort of a simplified view of what it may be for your process. But the FBI, the state criminal history, and the child abuse are the main ones. This is like an authorization form for getting that check actually complete. So this is what the family would agree to, and then this is the actual results of the CANS check. I've got the what is this? The street address, zip code. This is sort of for out of state, but you may need that for your in-state checks as well. And then a final sort of check results. So this is just a status of did everything come in. I have seen this set up in different ways where there's a status for each check type because obviously they'll come in from different governing bodies, so they will have different statuses. This is up to you as to how much data entry your team wants to input into the system. Those can be built really easily, excuse me, or you can have sort of a wrap up of the entire one, and that's sort of what I've got set by default. So when I add this into the site, I think the system, well, it's taking me back to the overview page. And so I would end up with a list. This is a single family, but a whole list of different family records. So I just wanted to show first off that you can add these manually. It doesn't have to be added. There doesn't have to be any automation. Nothing actually very special about that. Okay, however, the whole point of utilizing SAM is to actually have some automation and some support for your team to get the data entry done and to communicate, right, between yourself and the family. Let me, if we wanted, I'm going to go ahead and mute some folks. Hey there. There's a couple people maybe chit-chatting. If you can, maybe go ahead and mute yourself if not already. I think I might be able to do that for everybody. But just right now and then I will. Cool. Oh, okay. Aggie Lane, you don't have the background checks tab? Okay, well, you and I can get together or join us for the what is it, the next couple of calls. If you can, we can get that set up because we'll be doing it together, and I'll talk about that a little later. All right, so let me go back to how to automate things. So on the public forms, there is, let me actually open up the family portal and let me find my family record that I want to use. So the family portal is a spot that you can connect with your families online. So we've got lots of videos about that. This part we're going to talk specifically about the background checks in relation to it. Okay. And there may be even things that we want to show on here, but the part that I want to show right now is from the checklist. Excuse me, let me go back here. Let me actually insert the checklist section that I want into the site, and then I will show you what I want to show you. So this is an email that's populated. And now if I refresh this screen here, I get the application, okay, in as part of my process. So I want to actually fill out some of the application because I'm going to show you how that some of the settings can enter background checks for your team. So this is just a basic application asking for a name, how do I get in contact with them, where do you live, other more detailed information, right? And so the family goes in here and they're filling this all out. Right, they fill out any of the information that's needed here. They would set a password, emergency contacts, they hit submit. Let's see. Can I participants? Okay, so on this portion, on this page, we're asking questions about, excuse me, we're asking questions about, sorry, I can't talk and do a thing at a time. I'm trying to, and it doesn't actually work. But down here a little bit further, we asked them, where have you lived since you're 18 years old? Now, this is the way that this question is posed. It can be different for your different programs. So sometimes it's only for the last 5 years. Sometimes it's for since you were 18. It sort of varies. But I'm asking questions, but what I'm actually going to get from the family is background check records. This is going to become their out of state background check records. So I've got Kim Cooperman, right? So she can add her name and I'll say that she was in the state of Georgia and we can put in the address, whatever. Okay. Keep entering all of that. And then for Larry Daniels, and I'll say that he was also in Georgia and maybe actually we do 3. And so we've got Larry was also in California. Okay. The different years, right? So we could put what was 2000 to 2015. Same thing as, I don't know, 1983 to 2015. And this will be 2015 to 2018. Okay, so we've got some different time frames. We've got some different where have they lived in the last couple of years, okay, or for whatever time period is required. So I've done a couple of settings there, and now I'm going to go back into the client record. I've got a couple of background settings, but I'm going into the client record first to show you how those background check records come in. So over here again on the side, the background check records, I get, not really sure honestly where that one came from. I need to look at something. Oh, I do know. And I'll talk to that in a second. But sorry, so the family has entered the Georgia, the California, and the other Georgia for both Kim and for Larry's locations. Okay, so that is what I want to show you as one way that the family can support entering the background checks. This first one that I've got, this one right here, I do know where this came from. It came from an auto action. So as far as the settings I was talking about, I have an auto action set up to insert a background check record. So I'm going to go into auto actions and then search for background checks. And these are the couple of background check records that I have enabled. So the one that showed up was this one. I'm going to open this up to look at it, and then we're going to build together the setup for parent 2. It won't do it all again for parent 2 unless I reinitiate it. So I'll show you that. But I've got just the title of this is I want to insert a background check record so that my team doesn't have to do it manually like I showed you a few minutes ago. I want it to be triggered, at least for this example, on the application receive date, because when I finished that part 2 of the application form, when I hit submit, I had already put in settings that told Sam to enter the application receive date. So that is what triggered or initiated this to open up. And then I've got some filters that say, when the receive date is not empty, that will happen by default when I choose that particular trigger. But then I also want to tell Sam that I really only want this to happen if the applicant 1 first name is entered, or if their full name is entered. The full name is going to be entered from the first name anyways. But it's a combination of the first and last names. Okay, so I can change that to the full name if I want, but I'm telling it I want there to be specific record for that person. And then I tell Sam what action that I want to take. And what I'm asking it to do is insert a background check record where the families, the for is who is it for? So parent 1 or applicant 1, and it's pulling their state. So my assumption then, I didn't realize that this family was in Nevada. I'm probably going to change it. But over here on their address, it is Nevada. So it did pull the address that's on record. So one thing I'm going to do is this. I'm going to change this to Oregon because I want to show some settings for between your state or the family state and out of state. Let's see. Okay, so then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to change this because we're going to pretend that that always said Oregon so that it'll be consistent. And the only reason I'm choosing Oregon is because that's where I live. Let's see. Cool. So that is how this record got entered. So we're going to go ahead and set up a secondary auto action. I think I'm going to base it off of a different field just so I can enter the next field and we see that the background check for parent 2 is created. I would recommend that they are actually the same date. Okay. So I'm actually going to copy this so it stays together, and I'm just going to start a brand new auto action. I'm going to paste that in and set this up for parent 2. And then I'm going to choose the trigger that I want is when I update a field. So I'm going to choose that because I want to tell Sam that when on the case the application approved date is entered and when the family's first applicant 2 full name is not empty, right? So now there has to be a secondary person for this to show up. Then I want to insert a background check record. And so here I'm going to choose what fields I want on the background checks to be entered. So I'm going to tell it when it's for, I'm going to set it from the family's person 2 full name. And I'm going to put on the background checks that the state equals the family state. And so I keep going over here to this little gear icon because I want it to be set from another value that's already in the system. And that's all I'm doing. So I'm just opening up a new background check record. And so we can watch that happen in real time over here. On the client's record, I think in their checklist they have that application approved date. Okay, so I'm going to enter this date. And I did check that, right? Is it happening? Yep. It is. So application approved date is entered. Now if I go back to the record and the background checks, I have another one for Larry who is person 2. So 3 ways that I showed you that background check records can be entered. Again, we could add them manually. So what if the family said, oh, I forgot I lived in this other state, and they just are telling the social worker, you're welcome to add another one, that this is for Larry also, and he lived in Nevada. Okay. And I'm pressing Control Enter to save that page. And so I get another one. Okay. So that can be done. It can be added through an auto action where we are telling the system what needs to be in play in order for this to happen. And so it eliminates our team having to create these background check records manually, right? We wanted to use the system to support us with data entry. And then we also showed where on the application form the family entered their out of state, right? All of these, or all of these minus this one, from the application, but we asked it in a way, we customize the form to ask it in a way that is supportive of what the family requires from us. They don't really need to know that we're creating background check records. They just need to know, they just need to tell us where they've lived, right? That's the only part that we're communicating to them. So at this point in time, it already is a lot going on. I haven't even touched on persons in home, but I am going to show you then from here. I'm going to go back to auto actions list, and I'm going to choose the background checks table again, because that's what I'm talking about. I'm going to show this auto action that I set up earlier to show this. So when I have a person in home and they enter the birth date, and the birth date is over 14 years in the past, and this is something that's going to be different for you guys, right? Like every state is, sometimes it's 13, sometimes it's 18-year-olds. You can make modifications to this auto action. And their first name is not empty. I'm telling it to do the same thing. Insert a background check record with the person in home's full name for the particular state where it's the family state, because I need to do that in state. If you had the same rules for persons in home, where if they lived out of state, you need to get those checks done for them as well. There is a table that is like background checks underneath the persons in home so that you can pull from there. A little more complicated than I think we have time for showing today. It's just another table. It is a table that is copied. This table, as persons in family home, is just copied up underneath the person's. Excuse me, I'm sorry, the background check records rather is copied up underneath the persons in home, so that you can ask the question in the same way. Or, again, over here, when we do this, I'm going to go back here anyways. When we are asking here, this is sort of stated for applicant 1 and applicant 2. You could literally put it for where anybody else that lives in your home, or any caregivers, if that was something that you were asking for here too, if they've lived anywhere as well. So it doesn't have to be specific to parent 1 and parent 2. It could literally be asking, where did folks live, for anybody who lives in the home, right? And so they would just select an additional, please paste selection, an additional record here, right? Instead of 4, you would add 5. I'm going to go back here and show you that auto action for persons in home happening. So this is children, other folks living in your home. I'm going to say there's one person. It's going to be myself. And I'm 12083 and a female, and I don't know, I'll do a friend. And so cool. So then I'm going to pop down here and press save again. So I want you to note that the family can come back to the application form multiple times to insert information, and go back to this background check record for this family. And I have 2 things going on here, and that I will start to show you in a second. But here, that background check record has been added. This is added from the auto action, this one here. right? When the person in home birth date is over 14 years, then I want to insert a background check record. That's created here. And I have another subform just to allow me to see all the folks that live in the home right here, all in one space, so that you can make choices if you don't have automation set up. Okay. I think we have some time. I actually feel like I'm doing pretty well on time with the things that I want to show you. Does anybody have any questions that they want to know just about how to add background check records before I go into how to organize them better, things like that? You're welcome to use, like, just unmute yourself or ask in chat also. Okay, let's see. What do we have? Yes, you can totally add expiration dates, and I would set that up for with an auto action too. That it's, when such a date. The challenge I find with expiration dates is there's the way that I think it's most organized is, again, to have one per person and then per state that you need to do. So you're sort of putting child abuse, FBI, and state criminal all together. So they all have dates where that documentation is received, or when the date is when it was completed, right? That are different because they come in at different times. So, what is the expiration date that you want it to be based off of? I would add that as a different date, just sort of on the add edit form, putting an expiration date, and it's a choice. Is like the FBI could have a totally different expiration date than the cans, or you could have a consistent one, which is like whatever is the earliest one entered. It could be that, and that is going to need to be done a little bit more manually, I think. Because I don't think that the system has a way of saying this is the earliest date. We could continue to put a date on top, like layer a date, but it would be the later date, so something might expire before. Okay. And we can let's have a little bit of discussion, I think, on expiration dates and rules, either in the community call next week or in the Get It Done call, because I think let's start with sort of like a simple view of what things can be, and then we'll add complexity onto it also. All right, so I don't so get everything over here. So, okay, one of the things, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back here, is I've got all my background checks all together. And what I want to do is separate those that are from Oregon, because that's where my, fake agency is in Oregon, from all of those that are out of state checks. Okay, so I'm accessing the form customizer, edit in form customizer. And then I am going to go over here and add a new subform. Okay, so the subform is going to be based around the background checks. I'm going to create a brand new form so that we can show this from this point. So I'm going to set this as the background checks, and I'm going to call it out of state background checks. Okay. I am setting this as a multi-record view because I want to see all of the background checks that are here. It's going to be a view form, and I'll set it as a single row. And those things can be adjusted. So this point, here's my form. It's ready to go. What I need to do is put fields onto this form so that it shows up. So I'm going to click add multiple fields down here to the bottom right. I could totally choose field by field, but then I have to do this repeatedly. So here I'm going to select multiple fields and choose them all at the same time. So I'm going to put the FBI received date, I'm going to put the state criminal history, and the cans right there, who it's for, and I'm going to add the states. And I'm going to press save. So this is just my view. I'm going to reorganize the fields to put them into a better order. And I'll put that number 3. So state, child abuse, FBI. I don't remember what the order of the ones above are. So I'll look at that and we can change that if we want or go with this. So forms that include or use this subform. This is going to show where this subform is, and this is that original container form that we've got. So here's our original form that we're used to looking at. Here is our new form. I'm going to click over here. So again, I'm going to put in out of state. I should have done that on the in the setup, but that's easy enough to do. And then I'm going to put them, I'm going to change the subform's order so that the person's in home just falls down to the bottom. And I'm not going to add any filters quite yet because I want you to see that all of the data is here. Once we start adding filters, I've noticed that clients can get a little confused with that, of where did the record go. So I want to let you know that even though, well, basically at this point, we've got two subforms showing the exact same data. It looks a little funny because there are two fields here that aren't over here. So I'm going to add them so that it lines up a lot easier. But we've got both, all of the background check records here and then all of the background check records here. But of course, we don't want to see this duplicated. So I'm going to go back to the form customizer and make some changes to it. So this first subform here, I'm going to open in a new tab so that I'm looking at just it. I'm going to go to advanced options and then really advanced options, and there's this filters. So here is where I'm going to tell it that the state shown right here is going to equal Oregon, because that's what state I work in, and maybe that's the only state I work in. Now I know there are some folks on that work in multiple states and it's going to get a little bit more complex, or may not be able to be done. And it may, yeah, at least like for the out of state ones, it might be a little funny. So we can talk to that, but it definitely adds some complexity. So I'm going to put that on this one. I'm going back to the container form and I'm going to address this out of state one. I'm going to open this one up here. Same thing I'm doing, coming down, really advanced options, clicking filters and criteria, and then I'm going to add the state. And this time I'm going to say it does not equal Oregon. So it's going to show all of the other states in a separate area. The other thing that I want to do so that things line up a little better is add this process start date and the status, right? Is the check results, so that it lines up exactly and it'll look better. It'll be a lot easier for us to read together. All right, so now I'm going to go back here, and when I refresh this page, did I get it? I think I got it in the right order. Sorta. No, I didn't. Let me get this over here. This, I've got the edit field positions, and I'm going to put this right here. Now it will line up. So I'm refreshing this page. And now we can see clearly that we've got Oregon state checks up here. It's a lot clearer to see, and then any out of state checks. Now, please note that these records, the only thing I set up here was for this view, right? This multi-record view form. Multi-record means there's 1, 2, 3, 10, 80. We don't know how many records are going to be there, but it shows them all. That's what multi-record means. It's many. So all of those records are here. It does not have the details or the edit form that's linked on this subform. And so this is where it's going to become a choice for your team if your process is really different for your out of state, right? Like I don't think that you'll need the FBI again in general. I think you do need the state history and the CANS check for each of those. We can simplify the form here and then link the new form, or we go back to this subform and we link the same form and everything lines up exactly the same. It's sort of a 6 one way, half a dozen the other situation. I think that simplifying what your team sees is super helpful to the team. However, if it makes an administrative burden for your full admin, it's not worth doing this. Our system cannot be set up like this because we work with agencies in, I think, 36 states right now. So the rules are very different. The rules are also very fluid. And so let me show you how you would connect a form. I am actually going to start from the beginning again to make sure that you guys are seeing that really clearly. So if I want to edit a form, I'm going to, on a view form like what we're looking at here, we'll go to advanced options and then edit the form. Because there are multiple subforms on here, subforms kind of are dotted. You can see this where they are like dotted with these little ant lines around it. And then at the bottom left, I can edit this one by itself. Okay, and so this is the one that I want to do. Over here under advanced options, under form properties, I have the ability to set how it is sorted. Okay, so we should probably talk about that too. Whether I want to put an add button. Once I have an add form connected, where do I want the add button to be? In the sidebar or on the section header? And then I can choose the add form. So let's just say that I want everything to be really simple and exactly the same, even though I'm not going to use maybe the FBI, or I don't, maybe on the Oregon, I don't really need to see the address again, but just simplify it. There's no need to actually, in my opinion, to overcomplicate your administration. Some of the folks on the call are really adept at the adminning of SAM, and so go for it, having lots of different forms. I'm super also happy to talk to you guys about it and set things up. But some folks, it either the team is small or you're just getting started, and simplifying is so much better. Okay. So cool. So I'm going to press save there. And now I'm going to go back here and refresh the screen and then show you basically these links or icons are going to show up in here. Okay, that's all that we did. The next thing that I'm going to talk about, because I mentioned it, is the sorting and the order. I don't know. I think by default it does by like the record ID and sets it descending. So depending on when things come in, it could be kind of disorganized looking like that. You might do it by a person's name and then the state alphabetical. Sort of seems relevant to me. I think I would probably do that here as well. Depending on how a family enters their names, you can see because I entered my name as I would write it, first name, last name, but the full name field is shown as last name, comma, first name. We could change this, I think, to using there's another category that's like name for parent one, first name, last name. Like that could be the field that we choose instead, so that they come in order. So I just want to show the sorting, and I think I'm going to do it on those background checks. So again, advanced options, edit form. Then I'm going to go to this one specifically. This is the one that I want to manage. Advanced options, form properties, and I'm going to change the sort. So I'm going to tell it that I want to sort it by, let's do it by the 4. Who is it for? Ascending is fine, and then I will set it also by then the state, ascending. You guys may like it a different way, but this is how I'm going to go for it now. I'm going to save that information, then I'm going to come over here, hit refresh, and probably Larry is the only thing that we're going to see a little different. Yep, and so now our states are organized. It's doing like Larry here is looking different than Larry Daniels. That's why it's not coming in exact order. If I don't like that, right, I can go in and edit these things. Daniels, I'm going to copy that so that it's exact all the way. Come here. Okay, so no too, especially for folks who are new, that you can edit data. You can edit the data to look how you want it to look. It's you're not stuck with the data if you can come in here and edit if the field is an editable field and you can manage that. Um, cool. Does anybody have any questions on that specific part?
Quick question. If we update our forms to have these like multiple subforms, will that auto fix for people who are already entered, or do we need to trigger that new form appearance?
No, it will trigger for folks that are already in the system. Yep.
Fantastic. Thank
Hmm.
you. I love not having to trigger things.
Right. Yeah, so because we've decided on what the filter is going to be, Sam will auto arrange in the way that we've described. But again, sometimes this feels like frustrating for people if they like can't if the filters are not working the way that they expect. Sometimes that can feel really frustrating. So certainly reach out if you need help with that, or play with your filters. Right, open things up and then start to filter again. I see folks have a lot of filters on different reports and things like that. My suggestion and what I generally do will be to open up the report. Like I said, it's kind of pulling back all the filters, making sure the record they're looking for actually exists in the system, and then start applying the filters until we can narrow down which of the filters is eliminating a record from the results. Okay. So, and it really is like a trial and error until filters become more commonplace for you. And you, once you find a report or forms that you like, you can always create new or utilize those same filters to apply to different forms or different reports or whatever it is that you're building in the site. But for sure, it is a trial and error. Okay. So now I want to show you how background checks can be applied in the checklist and then how that looks to your family when they're managing, when they're interacting rather with the family portal or with your checklist configuration, with your checklist online. So cool. So in the checklist, in the checklist configuration, I have actually created two separate sections on on this. So for our Oregon clearances, I've got this separate section where I'm going to show to the family that I want the state criminal history, I want to do the FBI, and I'm going to do the child abuse for Oregon. I have set this checklist to open when the background check for, so once we've got somebody's name in that background check record, when that's entered, but the background check state equals Oregon, right? So all of those settings I already really have put into play, and it's going to open this up. If I had, let's say that we also want to add to that, the Oregon clearances, the child abuse authorization form, I can go in and select it. It's under the background check. It already exists. We've talked about this a little bit, so I'm going to pull the date, but that particular field already exists. However, if there's a requirement for your program or your state that doesn't align with what Sam has, that is okay, and you can create a new field, right? So where you place that field is super important because we're talking about background checks. You would put it on the background checks table, so that it relates per background check, per person that you're needing that background check for. Okay. I'm thinking a lot of times response time, responsible employee don't really apply for this, but that's up to you. We've talked about this with building checklists all last month, that even though Sam is prompting you here for all of the options, you don't actually have to put them all here. I already have a document, so I'm going to select the document. It's in the background checks. There's the authorization. And then here is where I'd want to show it for the family. So if I have that authorization form, this is the document that the family would download that says, yes, I'm signing here. I understand I need, I don't think you do background fingerprints for this, but I'm authorizing you guys to make this run on my identity. And so you can pull down the document. Where do I want to go? Over here. And I'm just going to put in this again. Okay, so I'm going to choose that document, which they can download. And then, or if there were a form, so sometimes I've seen people want the family, especially on the fingerprints, to tell them when they did the fingerprints, right? So the date that they got their fingerprints done, so that the agency can sort of judge when do they expect to get the fingerprint information back from the state, so that they know that it's been done, so that they can check on it if it's been such a period of time. In that case, you might choose to build a form that contains parent one, parent two. You could probably add on that form background checks for each person, that, and then just showing that date of that fingerprint so that you get those entries in there. That could be done. So you would connect a form. You can give information to the clients to help them understand more about how to complete that form. And that's all I'm going to do here. Going to set any more criteria, because this criteria is actually is that I want it just for what's happening in Oregon. Okay, so that's sort of internally. This one is for those background checks that are entered where it does not equal. So we've got things that are for four. When I show you the checklist now, what the family will see, you will not see this clearance, because I just built it, and I think these background checks have already been triggered. So we're not going to see it for this. I think I can show you how to retrigger it. And then the out of state clearances, they will have a limited view because we're only doing child abuse. We might also be doing the state criminal history, but I wanted it to be super clear of what's happening. All right. So this is that family's record. At this point in time, when we had done this, we didn't have all the background check records. So now if I refresh this, I've got a lot of clearances. So the Oregon clearances for Kim, for Larry, for myself. Then we've got out of state for Kim, for Kim, for Larry, and we're gonna have a third one for Larry, right? Because they lived, forget, California and Oregon. No, I'm sorry, California and Georgia, right? I'm gonna go back here. 'Cause actually, don't see a second one for Kim, so I'm not sure if it got triggered. Funny or not, I'm not sure why I have two for her when I actually don't on the inside. But let's look at these here. So we've got for Kim all the different documents that she needs to download. Let me pull this to the side so we can open this up. She can download this document, right? So it's the Oregon criminal history. She will fill this out. There might be, information on where to send this. This is sending here. I believe that sometimes your agencies ask that this information be sent back. You guys can kind of chime in on that, but I think also it's going to be different per person. If you want them to upload that finished form, they'd come in here, upload it, choose a file, put that in. So the family will have their own local drive of all the documents that they've uploaded, and then it is uploaded here. And you can see that that's been done. And they would do that for all of these. Unfortunately, right now, like per state, it doesn't allow us to show more than who it's for. I think, or it could show the state. It doesn't have the ability to show both. So choosing which one makes most sense for your team is going to be what you want to do here. You can see that the out of state has a more limited checklist shown to the family than what is shown to for the in-state checks. The other thing, let me go back here, is on the family checklist. Couple of places we talk about what communicating with the family as much as possible. You have a couple of spaces that you can choose to communicate. So over here on the Oregon clearances, I might, over here at the bottom right, that says enter client checklist settings. And here I can rename it to, I don't know, our family in-state checklist clearances, right? If I wanted it to have a different name, and I can type whatever details I need to relay to complete the form here. Okay. If you want it to be a little prettier than just a simple text, you can actually append a template. Let's look to see if I do have one. I don't know what this looks like, but I don't remember what it looks like, but I'm going to play with that so that we can see that. I do believe if we make adjustments here, it will make adjustments on here. Okay, so here was that brief message, kind of what that looks like. You can see that it's labeled differently. And then this is the template. Oops. This is the template right here that I had added. So just giving it sort of like an image. I think this has got a little icon with information here. We could also go back, and the other one I've got I think has something different. What does it have? Background checks 2. A little different view. You can switch out, right? So however you wanted to lay this out, I'm pretty sure we've got webinars on this portion specifically of like how to make it look prettier, things like that. Because when we did this setup, we showed those things in the webinar. I don't remember, Jess, I don't know if you know remember which one it is, but sometime earlier this summer. So it's in the public form setup, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so you can see this is like each one of these has this, but the out of state does not because that's not the one that I affected. Are there any questions on that? Because that's the big part I think that folks are getting ready to do is to share that with families. Okay. Let's see. I think, honestly, I can't believe that that was a lot of stuff that I wanted to show. That I think that's all that I wanted to show you. So we've got another 10 minutes. If you don't, let's address over here on this family record the expirations. My assumption is, and this again varies like per program, per state, is that generally there's a background check. The background checks will expire. Karen, you asked about that, and she is in Massachusetts. I think I got that right. What are your rules for expiration? I'm going to add an expiration date, and then I'm going to show like an auto action here. What are your
12 months. They expire in 12 months.
Is it all of them expire? Do you have to redo the whole thing for the state of Massachusetts? Do you redo the out of state? Kind of give me some.
Just the in-state and the FBI. So Mass Child Abuse Criminal and FBI. Okay. We don't rerun out of state.
Cool. Okay. So a couple things that I would recommend then for that. Let's go here, and on this out of state, I'm going to change this up because I use a process start date. Not everybody loves this, but I do like to have, this is sort of the date that you guys are getting it started, right? You've gotten all the information you need from the family and you're submitting it to the governing bodies. So it gives you sort of a point of reference for when to expect this to be completed. That's the thought process behind that. I'm going to add another field though. I don't think, actually I do have a check expiration date. So I'm going to add this one because again, I think if they all expire, you're at this, they're all going to expire essentially at different times, I think, for when they're coming in, but you're going to have to choose a specific expiration date. If that's not true, and usually you can plan on, the state has to be done, or the FBI is the most important one that doesn't expire, you could have an auto action set up for those dates. So now this field is available on this form. Remember, this form right here is there it is. This form is a different form from the details, the add edit. So if you wanted to also see it here on edit forms like this, the form customizers down here, this itty bitty little teeny itty bitty link. I know it's so small. It is what it is. This one happens to be shared where it's like the add edit and the details are the same. So I'm going to go to the one where it is. It's right here, and click here, and I'm going to add the check expiration date onto that as well so that you can see it. I might put that right up on row 1, right? So these little drop down lists will allow you to reformat. If it happens not be open like this, edit field positions will allow you to do that. Control 0. So if I refresh that screen, it'll now be shown here as well, up here in a second. And then again, I guess, Karen, what's your thought on entering the expiration date?
Can it be an auto action, like 12 months from one of those dates?
Absolutely.
Or do you think we should manually enter it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it's sort of like which one comes in first, right? Because they all come in at different times. I think that's the only challenge. So you can choose. And so I'll show you an auto action here to set that. And we'll say that it comes based off the FBI check receive date. Okay. And this may be, let me be honest here too, is the receive date could be a date that is different from the date of the document. And you guys need to make a decision on what you want that to be. So when Sam is recording essentially from this checklist, this date completed, this is the received date. Am I in that record? Yeah, right here, right? This is where I uploaded. This is the received date. However, if the state, right, you receive it a week after the date is done, you might want to enter a different date. And that's, again, it's super specific, and it's sort of up to your agency of what your process is going to be around that. But let's say that it comes from the FBI as the one that we want. Okay. I'm going to go to settings and then click auto actions. I'm going to create a new auto action, and I'm going to update the background check expiration date from FBI received date. Okay. This is up to you how you name this auto action. It needs to be something that makes sense for your team. Okay. It doesn't have to be like this. It could just be this. Okay. I'm going to tell it when I update a field, and then I'm choosing what table. Obviously, we're talking about the background check, so that's the table I'm going to select. And when it is the FBI check receive date, when it's not empty, save, I'm going to update a record, or I'm sorry, update a field. And I'm going to choose that it's the background checks, check expiration date, where it is, go. And then here is where I'm going to set it from, right? So I could totally put in a date, but that doesn't make any sense, right? So I'm going to set it from another field, okay? It could also be from the current date, but at this moment it's from another field, and we're setting it from the background checks FBI receive date, and then I'm going to put it as 1 year. Okay, so now let's look at that. Every time you add a an auto action, I always am going to recommend that you test it out to make sure that it's doing what you expect it to do. So I'm going to enter the expiration date here and press save. And then here's my check expiration date being entered for that one record. So now if expiration dates are important to you, I might also set out a new sub form based around the expiration date. When the expiration date is up and coming 2 months from now, to get you aligned with what needs to be shown, right? Or what needs to be done, right? Which is going to be entering a new background check record for that particular state and starting that process over again, because you can't, I mean, you can overwrite this, but then you're losing history. Okay, so you want to keep the history. You're going to say, if we're now a year in advance, we're now setting it out for Kim, for Oregon, and we've got a new record. Okay, so we may not want to see those that expired anymore, and we drop them out, right? So we know what we have to do, or we're showing it as those that are expiring in the near future. Another suggestion I have is that generally the background checks are required for a home study. So instead of setting those auto actions, let me go over here, go back to this, right? These initial background checks, or these initial person in home, setting them from a case state, we actually set it from the home study record. When a home study, I love the process start date or the welcome packet, or people have different names. People don't always love that. But when that background check or home study record is entered, we're inserting a parent one if parent one name exists, right? Same concept. But so then when you add a new home study record for the next year, it will do this again. You only need to do this obviously if that's the program, if that's part of your program. So I know that some programs just they do the background check once and that's that. So again, it's really reflective of your program specifically. Let me see. So I think that may be it for today. Let me go back into here. Okay, one of my things here is some of the setup in your process decisions is clarify the rules for your states and your programs. I'm getting really clear on what that looks like. Folks who have many states, or many different programs with different rules, I like to take it outside of SAM and put it in a spreadsheet to sort of lay out your different programs and what's required for program A and what might be required for program B, C, D, right? Depending, and or for states. So this is where it just becomes really complex when your organization has that much growth. Do you want to do manual or automated background check records? It's totally a choice. Automating it, a lot of times, is not already set up, because if Sam starts doing something and you're not aware, that is equally as frustrating for folks that are new as if it doesn't do anything at all. So making some choices, rewatching this video, and then coming next week and the week after to kind of set up, ask any questions next week, and then set up your checklist with us. I'm happy to go ahead and do that. That's part of that get it done discussion. So we'll be setting those up for folks. Then I've got, like, will your families be, are you using the application form? I'm going to recommend that people do it because it's going to save hours of data entry from your team and get your families more acquainted with technology that's going to be supportive of your processes. So getting that set up, but do you want them to enter the out-of-state records? Are they not? Just making choices around that. And then the last thing, to the last point, was if it's automated, when do you want these background check records to be inserted? Is it on the home study record? Is it only a one-time deal? Making a specific choice of when that happens. I will tell you, I really like date fields because it's very specific. It's yes and when. It's because you guys are you're doing a service for families, and it's really a history of that service too. I think it really cements the chronology, and that's why I'm going to recommend that almost all the time for you guys. Resources, making sure that you guys know where to find these resources, super helpful. So we will post this webinar under the help guides, under webinars here. I will post today's webinar very likely under Family Portal and under Checklist, and I very well may have create a whole separate section for background checks specifically, so that if you're looking at it or looking for that specifically, it'll be there. So that's there, and you're welcome to go in. Sorry, let me jump back over here. Any of these, all of this that we're talking about, all of our webinars are posted here. So come in and use them because it's hours of free training. You can always contact support. Let me jump back over to the site. Contacting us through support here. This will set up an email. Welcome to communicate there. A lot of that time is done free of charge, so I'm generally writing you back of like, this is what I think. Get some help there. You can access the help guides that I was just showing you through the webinars, specifically through help will get you there, or you can make a call to us and that'll take you to my schedule. Oops, let me jump back here. What else do I want to talk about? We are on YouTube, so any videos that we're posting up there are there. If you'll subscribe, that will super help us, and then you'll know when new videos come out as well. And then the last thing is taking advantage of all of the free webinars that we're doing, like today through inreachsolutions.com/events. That comes out through emails that Jess sends out too. But you can always find us online also. And the upcoming webinars are posted here where you can RSVP. So, gosh, what's that? That was last week? That was last week. But this is today. This is next week, and so forth, right? So getting those things done. And then, yeah, so this is our schedule. Next week, we're going to do a community call. So anything that we've talked about today that you've got questions on, please bring it. If you feel comfortable about us getting into your site, happy to do that. We'll never really show any real records. We're only going to show configurations and setup on this, or a test record if that's relevant. So bring your questions. It can be background check specific or not. And then the following Thursday, we'll do Get It Done. So if you're actually ready to set this up, please be ready to do it with us, and we'll build out the subforms together so that you're not alone. And we'll do it with you. And believe me, your questions are helpful for other folks on the call, for sure. So bring them. And then, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining today. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Otherwise, thank you for your time and enjoy the October. Take care.